Hello, everybody. Welcome to part two of this week's lesson. I am going to redo this because I accidentally recorded this entire thing and didn't notice that my audio wasn't on. Um, so in this section, we're going to go over the basics of Substance Painter and how to export a object from Maya into Substance Painter. The basics of this are that we are going to create material slots for our object, which you can see I have one set up for each different part of the rocket here. Um, I'm going to do this. I've already done this because it does take a while to set up, but I'm going to show you some basic setup for this, and how to do the same thing. But what I recommend is this takes a while because I am doing this on a mesh that has already been combined. I recommend you don't combine your mesh until you've assigned your materials. That's very important because it'll be a lot faster to assign materials to each individual object in your outliner and then combine than it will to do what I'm about to show you, which requires us to select faces and assign those meshes. So let me just pause. Okay, so let's open up. I'm going to open up a different version of the rocket. This one was an earlier version, but it doesn't have all the material slots already set up, so I can show that to you really quick. Right now, there's only one material on it. It's this standard surface 2. That's fine, but what we want to do is set up individual ones. So what we'll do is we're in object mode. We want to go into face mode. We're going to select the faces that we want to apply material to. So I'm going to do these fins because they're a little faster to do than other parts of the rocket. So all you do is holding shift. Oops, don't want to select that face. All you do holding shift, select all of the faces that you want to assign a material to. Make sure you grab all the ones you miss from your marquee. And next one, same thing here. Faces. And then the last one, still holding shift. And this last little one here. Oh, I already had it. Okay. Sure, there you go. All right, so now we've selected all of these. We're going to, as I showed before, applying material, you're going to right-click, and you're going to, this time, we are going to assign a Lambert. So go under Favorite Material. By default, you should have a basic Lambert in here. So we're going to assign that to this, and it should call it Lambert 2. I'm going to rename it to Fins. I'm going to rename our slots or our materials that we've added to this mesh so that when it's exported into Substance, it's a lot easier to tell what's what when you're working with it. And I'm also going to give it a color. So let's give it yellow. Now, if we wanted to do the next part, we want to add another material to another part. Let's say the boosters here. So again, just grab all of the different faces, make sure we have all of the ones we want for the booster, right click, assign favorite material, and Lambert. And this is now Lambert 3. We're going to call it booster. And then we're going to give the booster a color. Let's call it blue. And we'll do this throughout the entire object. Again, this is why this is faster to do it, because I could just have selected the window before I had attached it to the rest of the mesh, instead of having to select all these faces, which is the most time-consuming part. So I'm not going to do the rest of this, but so for instance, if I wanted to do the nose, we grab all of the nose pieces, and we assign it a Lambert, and we call that nose, so on and so forth. But now that we have this complete, we're going to export this in an FBX format so that we can use it in Substance Painter, and also so that we can use it in Unreal Engine. So I'm going to close this up, and we're going to reopen the old one, or the one that I had opened previously. And now we need to make sure this is ready for export. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to select the entire thing and go to our UV editor. And we want to make sure that our UV map is set to a UV set. So by default, you should have a UV set 1, map 1. We just want to make sure that it is selected as map 1. And we want to do that because we want Substance to read this map correctly. Once that's done, now we can export it. So we will send this to, we'll save our scene just to make sure everything's saved. We will delete all of our history, and then we will save, and we'll send it to Unreal. So this export option will export it as an FBX. Just select all. It'll show you your project folder, and it'll ask you to select that where you want to create your import folder. So it's going to create this folder called import, and it's going to create the file, whatever you want to call it. I've already exported this as rocketexport.fbx. For the options for FBX export, the only things that we really want to make sure that we have checked off are our under geometry, our smooth mesh, and any referenced assets. We don't have anything else that is necessary to check off on this, so we can leave that as is. If we were using any NURBs, which currently there are none in this, we can convert that to NURBs or to different mesh rendering types. NURBs are totally fine in Substance, so that's cool. If we have an animation in our mesh or in our project, we want to make sure that the animation is checked so that it gets exported as well. And any deformations or anything are checked off. Everything else we can kind of ignore because we're not using any of it in this class. But this is also for exporting things as full scenes. So if you had a full scene with animations, different cameras, lights, sound effects, and things like that, all in Maya, you can export all of those as well. I'm not going to export this again because I've already exported it, but if you click on export, you may get a warning depending on the type of materials you've assigned to your material slots. This is why I said to use a Lambert. It will want to convert in an FBX. It will want to convert everything to a Lambert. And if it does that, and I'll show you what happened, because when I already exported this, I exported this with Arnold materials, not Lambert's, and it'll basically just remove all of these color markings you've already done, which is okay, because we're going to replace them anyway in Substance. But we, if we had anything in here that we were using that the color coordination here, just to keep an eye on, make sure we know which parts are which. Might want to make sure that that gets exported as well. So once it's exported, you can open up Substance Painter, which will look like this the first time you open it. And what you want to do is you hit File and New. And we're going to create a new project. The template is going to be Unreal Engine 4. This is just for some assets and things that work better in Unreal Engine 4 or Unreal Engine in general. There is no Unreal Engine 5 option yet in Substance, but it's all the same. So the workflow is just going to work fine as is. Our map format is DirectX. It's totally fine. Document resolution is 2048. That's okay too. And next we want to do is go to File. I'm going to select a file. We're going to select our FBX that we just exported. And then we're going to click OK. And it's going to produce two views for you. So you're going to have your 3D object rendering view here, which is going to show you what your object looks like when rendered. And then over here is your UV map. Now you'll notice that this is not the complete UV map. If we look at our map here, there's all sorts of pieces missing. That's because of the material slots that we've made. So I've created a bunch of different material slots here, and I forgot to name a couple of these when I did this the first time. So they don't have all of their names, but this booster slot in this list only shows the material or the UV parts that affect the boosters. The nose has the nose. the window. This is all the window UVs. So if I wanted to, and I'll show you this real quick, we have a paintbrush already selected by default. So if I wanted to paint base color, okay, give it a red. And then if I'm painting here, the only thing that gets affected is the UV that I have selected in this slot, which means the only thing that gets affected is the window. Now, if I went to the nose and say, let's make this a green, sure. All right, make this a different color. And if I painted directly on the 3D model, I can't paint outside of the material slot that I've chosen. So this just makes it easier to affect one part of a material without affecting the others, which is important if you have different textures, like different types of materials that are like leather versus cloth versus stone, things like that. It's a lot easier to deal with it in a single material slot than trying to paint around points in the that you don't want to paint on in the mesh itself. So let's go over or I guess next is we're going to go over the different things in the UI and what you can do to them. So give me 1 sec. I have to restart the recording and it'll be good. Okay. All right. So what are let's go over the UI a little bit for Substance and the different things that you can do. I like to treat Substance as kind of Photoshop adjacent. Like a lot of Adobe products, it uses very similar concepts. So you have your layers, you have your properties for your different brushes and other tools. And by manipulating these in certain ways, you can get really cool effects on your materials. But at the basics, I'm going to start with, there we go, the body, because the body has a lot of stuff going on in its in its material. If you choose a material slot from your, or a texture set, I should say, from your texture set list here, it'll give you all of the layers in that list, and you can add layers and create different tools and stuff through here. So right now you have a base layer 1 that's a paint layer. If I wanted to add another layer, say I wanted to add by right clicking, we can add, say, a fill layer. So the fill layer, what this is going to do is it's going to fill the entirety of the space with anything that I put on it. So if I wanted to say, let's do it doesn't make any sense, but let's go with this large rusty metal here. If I drop this into the fill layer slot, anything that is affected by it, you can see it over here, will have that. Maybe I could do something that's a little more obvious. There you go. Anything that is affected by this layer will get that fill. If I wanted to, let's delete this because I don't really want it. If I was in the paint layer and I wanted to paint on a material, so I'm going to go into this in a second, but this is basically a pool of different pre-made material assets from Substance that you can use. That will give you things like like stone or human skin or whatnot. Say I wanted to use this brush. If you drag it in and drop it into the paint layer, it will create a fill layer for you. And if you want to paint with it, you go down to our brush. Okay, my material. There we go. If you double click on it, you can see it is now the shader here that we're painting with. If we go to our brush settings in our properties, you can see you can do things like change the size of your brush. It has a fall off that you can create, basically replicating pressure. If you're pushing down on a pen, for instance, you can turn that off or on. And if you turn it off, basically it's always going to paint at the size of your brush. If you turn it on, it will paint and have a fall off all the way down to, this is currently set at 5%, but we can increase that to make it more of a wider fallout. But let's just uncheck the the pressure. Flow, if you use flow, it basically affects, think of it as like the flow of the ink that you're painting with, the flow of the paint. So like how much of it is coming off of your brush at one time. If you just want to paint a solid color or a solid material onto the object, then you just leave that at 100. It also has similar pressure tool. Your opacity for your strokes and the angle of your strokes, you can manipulate all of this through here, but we are going to, I'm just going to show you painting this material on. So all I'm doing is painting straight onto it, and it's giving it, so what it's doing is it's painting the material map that's already been set up in the space of the brush. So that, if I were to click individual spots, that's going to give you individual parts of that map. If we were to constantly paint, you'll see it kind of smear. That's because it's overlaying that material map on top of itself. If you do a single straight line, you get one set iteration of that map. If we undo all this stuff and I were to increase my brush size to the maximum and click and paint, now I've painted basically half of this ship with one stroke. If I stroke all the way up, oops, I guess I didn't go back far enough. It's fine. We're just painting here. And I can paint, or if I wanted to paint in 2D, we can paint in 2D. So that is one way to paint. Very easy, very simple. We can get into a lot more different technical parts of the material, which I'll do next week. But for instance, this material itself has maps for color, metallic, normal, roughness, and it doesn't have any maps for height, which means that it doesn't actually have any additional height being created by it. It's all flat. But this has specific parameters for the color it's using, how metallic it is, how rough it is, and a normal map. Normal maps are what are giving it, what gives it any kind of texture across a spot painted. So like, if it doesn't have any, actually, we'll just leave it at that. All right, so that's painting. And again, what you'll probably end up doing for this week, other than playing around with substance, is taking your object, whichever your last week's project was, and painting on it in substance, using the assets here. Okay, so for this rocket, I've already painted this brushed metal on the body of the rocket. Let's work on the nose. So I'll select my nose, and what I want to do here is I want to paint, say, this polished metal, but I don't want it to be gold. So we'll go to our material properties here, and if we scroll down, you'll see the each of these materials has different parameters set up. This one has one called metal type, and so right now it's brass. I guess technically that's more brass. This is more gold, but you can select from a bunch of different metal types for this one. But say I wanted to do something that was red, and I don't see a red option in the metals because copper is the closest I can get. I'm going to choose custom metal. And now what this is going to do is it's going to give me a color picker. It's going to apply all of the same settings for roughness and its metallic, everything, its normal maps. It's all going to apply that similarly, but I can change the color. So we'll change it to this red. Okay. And now we have this that we can paint right on top of. And I'm painting here. You can also fill. Filling is faster, but for this example, I wanted to paint it. And then let's do something. Let's grab our fins here. And for our fins, I want to try something like... I want to try something like maybe a galvanized steel look. And we're going to change our metal color. So this one doesn't have actual metal types. It just has the color, which you can change. I'm going to change it to kind of a bluish gray, something kind of like that. Yeah. And now I'm looking at this, and I don't really love how kind of pitted it is. I think it has a little bit too much intensity in the grain here. So if I were to manipulate that, move it up and down, move it down a little bit, and then lower the roughness a little bit. Actually, yeah, like that. And then you can mess with all of these different parameters inside of the material that you're working with to get kind of what you're looking for. Actually, I kind of like that. So let's go with that. And okay, I did kind of like that, but the scale is way off. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to reduce the size of my brush. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. To about there, say 20-ish. And we're going to paint to give us that cool galvanized blue steel look. And again, I'm painting on just one fin, but we can paint it on all the other ones. If I wanted to do this as a fill, I could. And I'll show you that in a sec because this is a little time consuming. So if we add a fill, and in this fill, we took the metal and dropped it in, and then go to our parameters, and I think it was kind of like a that. Let's go with that. Let's go less roughness, and we can scale down the pattern. Yeah, scale it a little bit, I guess. That's kind of what we were looking for. So you'll see these. This is just a rendering issue. It takes a lot of rendering power to do this in real time. But you might see the actual materials take a little while to render. But this is kind of the look we were going for. Next up, let's do the window. So the window is... it's called window. Of course it is. And with the window, let's do a... So I didn't actually separate the glass from the rest of the window, and I should have. Okay, so now we're going to go into the window. I've selected my window, my texture set. Now I didn't separate the window's rim from the actual glass. That's okay. I can work around that for this part of the tutorial. But that's okay, so now let's work on the window. I've selected it in my texture set list, and I forgot to separate the actual glass part of the window from the rim. That's fine for this. I'll just I'll show you how I would paint the glass onto the window, and we can kind of leave it at that. So for this window, I don't have any glass options in my asset panel here. So if I were to search any materials, yeah, I didn't think so. I wonder if there's anything. So you can use the filters and search bar here to search through all sorts of stuff. There's a bunch of different like text options that you can add. I'll get into that next week, and decals and things. And all I'm really looking for is glass. So what do we have for glass? This looks cool. Let's go with this one. So if I were to drop this right into the layer and paint the entire thing, okay, that's not exactly as reflective as I thought it was going to be. Let's try this one. Oh, no, it's got a different map going on to it. Okay, I don't really like these glass options. Let me see if I can drop this. That was a mask. I didn't mean to drop that on the mask. See if I can drop this in this layer. And oops. No, it doesn't actually have any parameters or anything to change. So we're just going to ignore that. Let's do, instead of that, let's go into the other tab that I wanted to show off anyways, the Substance 3D assets. So if you have a Substance account, which you should if you have a Substance Painter subscription through Adobe, you'll have access to this entire library of materials and stuff that Substance and Adobe have. All sorts of things. This is obviously very useful if you're looking for a specific type of material and don't have access to it otherwise. There's certain things about the subscription that require you to have credits to download a certain number of materials every month or every cycle. But anything that you've actually downloaded, you'll find in the My Assets section. This is the account for Dogwood Gaming, for our video game studio. So there's a lot of stuff in here. But that's cool. What we want is a cool glass. Let's search glass. And sorry, I got confused for a second. So once you download it, you're going to have to go to your file and import resources, and then click on add resources and find where it has downloaded it to. So by default, it'll download it into your documents, Adobe Substance 3D Painter, Assets Materials. So this is chromatic glass. So we're going to open that one. It is set as a base material. It's translucent, and then you can import it. If you're importing other things such as images, stickers, decals, things like that, you'll want to make sure that the type of asset that it is, whether it's a base material or it's an environmental material, things like that, are actually um, selected there. We'll get into that next week. But if we go into our assets, now we have our chromatic glass. Drop it on there, and there it is. I don't actually want to fill it, but that's what it looks like. Now we can go down to our parameters inside of our glass. I kind of like, let's go with this green look. I like that. And I think the only other thing that I really want to change here is its refraction. Let's lower its refraction down quite a bit. All right. And now we're going to paint on this. What I'm going to try to do, just to kind of show what it should look like, is I'm just going to try to... That's good enough, I guess. Rotate this way. I'm just going to try to paint it once. All right, fall off. I don't like that. Let's start this over. Okay, so now I was going to paint this, but I looked at it and I didn't like the way that it looked painted. So instead, we're going to just going to fill it, and then I'm going to go to my parameters and let's see what it looks like with the gold. Yeah, it looks fine. I think I'd actually rather do that green and yeah, we want two colors. We want less refraction. And let's rotate our gradient a little bit. Get us a nice... right about there. There we go. Okay, so here we have our window. We don't really like the way that this has been separated like that. Tiling is kind of something that we have to be aware of. When doing fuck. All right, so there's our window there. Again, if I was to have actually remembered to do the rim differently from the actual window itself, I could make this look quite a bit better. I'm not going to mess with painting on it because I can already see the UV seams are a little iffy in certain spots here. So we're just going to leave that as it is, but you can, if you, when you're working on your projects, you come across issues like this, I recommend using paint as opposed to fill for that, because you can paint over those lines pretty easily. So if I were to drag this up top and we were to paint this ourselves, it's a rough paint job, but you can see that we've gotten rid of those lines as well. Last thing is the boosters. I'm not really going to do anything special with the boosters. Go to the booster thing, or booster texture. And what we're going to do is we're just going to give this a plastic grip. Let's just throw that in there as a fill and see what that looks like. Oh, that's got a lot of roughness to it. Never mind. I don't like that. Let's instead, I wanted to give it something kind of dull, but maybe if we go with the brushed metal and then, well, not as its own, we don't need the plastic grip. We just want the brushed metal. And then if we take that and we go into our parameters and let's make it a much darker metal and let's make it a lot rougher, and we can mess with the brushes, and I really want to reduce the hairline density there. Sure. There we go. Right, and that is what we've ended up with. Once this is done, the last step is to export it. So we can, one of the things that we want to do first, we can export the entire mesh. All right, and we'll be happy with that, sure. So now the last thing we need to do is export these materials, these textures, so that we can use them in our project. So to do that, we can export textures under File. And then here, it'll give us our output directory and our output template. So because we chose Unreal Engine 4, it'll package them for Unreal Engine 4. We don't need SSS. We just want Unreal Engine 4. And we want them to output as PNGs, and 8-bit PNGs is totally fine. And then that is it. And we click export. It exports everything for us. And then there we go. Sorry, export twice, and then it exports it. I was very confused for a second. It tells you all the different materials, all the different files it's made. I'll go into more about what all this stuff means next week, but basically for each of these material slots that we made a set of texture files. And these files will then be able to be put into Unreal Engine and dropped into our mesh in Unreal Engine. So that's the basic workflow, and that is where we're going to end it for this week. Just really fast at the end of this, I want to mention that I have been very behind on things. I apologize. I am catching up. I will probably post a update on the course space for updated project due dates and things, and I might move some stuff around, but I wanted to let you all know that I'm going to get it into a rhythm that actually works now that I'm no longer as sick as I was. So thank you all. See you all next week.